everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this video we are going to be unboxing Conan the board game from Monolith, but we're not unboxing the original version of the game that came out many years ago. Don't worry, you want to see that unboxing, you want to see a terrible version of that unboxing. It's one of the first videos I ever did on the channel, and it's pretty rough and it's pretty brutal. The audio is terrible, the video is terrible, but that was one of the first games that I opened up on the channel, so it definitely has kind of a place in my heart, and it reminds me of how many years have passed and how far this channel has come since then. But there was also another Conan video that I released, and that one happened about 2 years ago or so, and it was a featured product video on the Monolith Sourcebook and geomorphic tile sets. Now this was around a collaborative effort with Monolith and Modiphius to put together solo and cooperative rules for Conan the board game. So from about 2 years ago, you have been able to play Conan the board game in a solo or cooperative fashion. However, a Kickstarter landed a couple years after that, which is what these rewards you're seeing here in front of you are from. And there's a number of boxes as well as a brand new Tome book, which houses brand new rule sets around solo and cooperative play. Now, the one thing I want to mention is if you have the Monolith Sourcebook from 2 years ago, there's going to be tweaks to that with this new Tome that came in this Kickstarter. So it's basically been updated, and there's been another pass that's happened over it from Monolith to ensure, it's up to snuff with current day. And I'm really excited for that because I really enjoyed Conan as a multiplayer experience and was really excited to be able to use this stuff in a solo or cooperative fashion. So inside of this unboxing video, we're going to be focusing on all the new content that was released as part of the Conan the Conqueror Kickstarter, the most recent one that has now delivered. I was really honestly not expecting these items to arrive inside of 2021, so it was quite a nice surprise when they did. And there was quite a bit of additional content added into this particular Kickstarter, whether it came from stretch goals, map packs, or special trapdoors, all that kind of stuff. And you can see examples of some of these boxes sitting right here. And we're going to dive into each of them and see them on the table. Now, just in case you don't have the time to go check out my prior video on the Monolith Sourcebook, which came from Modiphius Entertainment, and again, there was a collaboration there in order to create those solo and co-op rules 2 years ago or so, it's worth mentioning if you have this and you also get this in order to, use it for your solo and cooperative experience, you're not duplicating things. You will be duplicating 90% of the rules that were structured, but the most recent rule set will now be housed in this versus this. But the bonus of still having the Monolith Sourcebook, as well as those tiles that were released back then, is there still are solo and cooperative scenarios that were only housed in here and not in here, meaning you have two completely different sets of things to run through when you're playing solo or cooperative. So as you can see inside the Monolith Sourcebook, the original one from 2 years ago, there is a number of scenarios here: Demon from the Depths, the Sleeping Serpent, all the way down to Halls of the Scarlet Citadel. All of those were made specifically for this particular book. Now, checking out the inside of the Tome of Skelos, it's worth mentioning, of course, you're going to have the solo and cooperative rules section here repeated for 90% or so of the rules that were in the prior one, but there are tweaks that are going to make this particular rule set better to reference than the other, and what you get as an additional bonus is a completely different set of scenarios here to play through. Now, on top of that, you also have the ability to play these scenarios as one-offs so that they don't actually go from scenario to scenario connecting through in a campaign way, or if you want to play with campaign rules, those rules are now available here as well. So as you can see from this full table of contents, one of the major reasons that I jumped on the new content here for Conan the board game is because this new tome literally is comprised of 75% of the book being related to solo and cooperative mode gameplay, which makes me extremely excited. And then a very small portion at the very bottom here adds to the existing multiplayer scenarios adventure mode that most of us are used to from the original game when it launched. So it is kind of nice to see a book book that's designed with solo and cooperative sitting right at the forefront, and some additional scenarios down below just to kind of bolster the already large library of scenarios you have for multiplayer. Now on the right hand side, we've got the rules clarifications, because there might be a number of those to this point or to date. There's also some translation errors talked about here, frequently asked questions section. It then begins to dive into all the different game boards. There are a ton of extremely cool looking environments or game boards to play on, and so there's unique rules for all of them, and this will really detail things out to ensure you understand how each of them operate. And so without too much of a wait, you get right into the different approach, the solo and cooperative play rules, and gets right into how the Overlord is going to be controlled when playing solo or cooperative. Now just before we go ahead and flip through a number of other pages to show you the general layout of the book, not every single page, but I will show you kind of how some of these scenarios are set up so you can see essentially what you're getting yourself into. I wanted to also zoom in on these two sections. You can feel free to pause the screen and read them if you'd like, to give you a good idea as to what this particular book is trying to teach you. Here's another page that will likely interest viewers of this video around the skills, the optional scenarios, campaign rules, and how equipment and caches are handled when playing solo and cooperatively. It's worth mentioning at the very top here, it states, we believe these scenarios are best played as a campaign where equipment, victory points, boons, and story all contribute to the sense of progression. However, there's nothing stopping you from playing these as one-offs. On the following page, we have talk about spells, boons, hero selection, archetypes, starting equipment, defeat, victory points, ranks, all that kind of stuff you're going to need to know to get into your first scenario. Skipping a page in between, which essentially was just artwork telling you you're moving into the campaign section, we now come to the very first scenario called Prelude, back in the village. And here you can see the general layout of how a particular scenario would go if you were starting to get this thing to the table. You'd have your objective here set up, of course, your flavor text up top, asset deck, event, special rules, options, and then on the right, a visual representation of how things should be set up, and some special things to note around the hero victory and the hero defeat. And this continues throughout the book for each and every scenario. Again, if you're playing solo and cooperatively, I likely also, in line with what the book is telling you, highly recommend you play this as an actual campaign and keep your progress as you move from scenario to scenario. I believe that would be the most fun way to enjoy this thing, as it is trying to tell you a story as you progress through. But as I mentioned earlier, if you only have time for one-shot adventure, this is still going to fit the bill. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and just flip through a number of these pages here. Of course, what the actual camera is focusing on might be in and out of focus, but I want to give you a rough idea as to how this book is laid out. So you've got an artwork section that is going to depict all the new individuals and creatures that came from this particular campaign, and then just details kind of their backstory and stuff like that, their strengths and weaknesses. And it's in the art book section of the back of the book, and then it kind of gets right back into the scenarios, although these ones are for multiple people around the game table to enjoy. And then, of course, once you get past that section, this is called the adventure book. That's the actual mode, and those ones you just saw me flip through were all for multiplayer purposes. And then we get back into the solo and cooperative ones, where there is a whole bunch to enjoy, and there's all kinds of different scenarios that are going to throw different things at you all the way along. With the book out of the way, let's now check out this major box that came as part of the Kickstarter. We'll flip it over, take a look at the back of the box first, and then check out each and every component inside. As you can see on the back of the box, it states it's for 1 to 5 players. Again, coming from Monolith, you got a visual representation in the top right-hand corner as to what the game looks like when it's sitting on the table. You also have some very big blow-up visuals of the miniatures that you're going to find inside this box as well. When you open up the box, this is what you're going to find. A number of these character or player boards, which are all wrapped up. You've also got some of these bases, plastic bases, mini cards, and of course a giant thing likely full of miniatures. This right here is open space. It just slots in there, so that's going to allow for me to store a couple of things that are in smaller boxes, hopefully inside of this larger box. Pulling everything outside of the box, we have 2 punch boards to take a closer look at, a game board, which is going to be double-sided, and there could possibly be 2 game boards here. We'll see momentarily. We have some plastic bases, as I mentioned before, the player dashboards, and we have a couple packs of cards to go through and a box of miniatures. There are two punch boards, so here is the top of one of them. I'll go ahead and just rotate this as well so you guys can see it from a straight on angle. And we're also going to go ahead and just flip this thing over so you can actually see what's on the opposite side as well. These tokens want to come flying out. They probably will as I'm showing you this. So that's what the backs look like. We'll move this one off screen for a second. You've got all kinds of tiles in here, and I'm pretty certain when I start moving these around, they are going to all fall out, but let's see what happens. Oh, I got lucky there. They all stayed in there, but I can tell right now they all want to just fall, but they look great. Now, the game boards for Conan, the board game, have been well known to be absolutely phenomenal. The individual or individuals that actually put together the artwork behind these game boards deserve the highest praise. They are some of, still to this day, the best game boards that I have ever seen in a miniatures game, hands down. I don't know how they nail the depth perception of these flat boards to make it feel as though there actually is some depth here to look at and to easily be able to understand. They just do it so well, and of course they take the actual artwork so serious that it really does look like a real place, a real setting you want to actually spend time in. The artwork for each and every environment is just so impressive looking. I cannot gush over it enough, and I've got all of the prior Conan game boards. Every single one of them is a stunner when you put it on the table. Moving right along, let's take a look at some of these character dashboards here, and it's not just for the heroes, there's also some nasty enemies in here as well. Now, it's worth mentioning on those player boards on the opposite side is a different language. Of the two small mini packs you saw here, one was English and the other's a different language. So we'll focus on the English pack here in this video. Inside of the box here, there are two tiers worth of miniatures. This is the top tier, the smaller miniatures, and there's also the heroes there down at the bottom. So let's go ahead and I'll show you a couple of sculpts from this tray. The bottom portion of the tray of miniatures, they get a little bit larger. Let's take an up-close look at these larger stretch goal miniatures. Next up, we have a box that I believe has more game boards in it. It appears there are 2 game boards in here as part of this expansion called Tales of the Red Brotherhood. Inside the booklet, it has game board rules, scenarios, the mutiny, theft on the high seas, the curse of the deep part 1 and 2. It states down at the bottom this expansion requires components from the Conan 2015 core box and the Conan the Conqueror expansion box. That Conqueror expansion box is the one with the skull on it we opened up earlier. It says here gangplanks ×3 are included in the Conan the Conqueror expansion box that are then used in these scenarios. And this will detail out exactly how these game boards operate. And in a similar style and format, the different scenarios laid out. Here is a look at one side of this double-side game board. And as I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, the design and illustration of these game boards are mind-blowing. Here's a look at the other one on one side, and more beautiful artwork on the other. This box houses the Shadow Kingdom expansion. Here are all the components that come inside the box. Let's take a look inside the booklet quickly. We'll go through these boards here and then take a look at the miniatures. Inside of this booklet, we have Chapter 1, Shadows Linger, Chapter 2, The Serpent's Coils, and Chapter 3, Night of the Kings. This expansion, you need Conan 2015, the core box, and the Conquer expansion box to enjoy it. Here's a look at chapter number 1. I'll go ahead and just flip a couple pages so you can see how things are laid out. Very similar to what we saw in the other booklets. It includes a couple of new individuals as well. At the bottom of the tray, you have 10 miniatures, the exact same sculpt. Then you have a unique sculpt for the big bad, and then the 2 heroes that we just took a look at. And that all leads us down to these final 2 boxes. The box on the left is all about hidden chambers. Could be good or bad when you get into those chambers. There are 2 double-sided mini-maps inside and 8 trapdoor tokens. And on the right-hand side is an upgrade for the dashboards to a deluxe version. This mini expansion looks like it's going to be a cool addition to the gameplay. And they're all double-sided, so you can see the artwork is different on both sides. This is going to be a really, really nice addition. This is a cosmetic thing and it's not required whatsoever for gameplay, but will certainly keep things in the right place on your player dashboards. You can see these dashboards can actually open up, then you slot your character inside, and of course you need to punch out all of these in order to actually see the artwork and everything else through it. And then of course it allows for certain positions to hold cubes during gameplay. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up this unboxing for everything new that came from the Kickstarter Conan the Conqueror from Monolith Games. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Conan as a solo and cooperative game, even from years prior. Does this, what has now been released, even in addition to what was released years ago, intrigue you even more? For me personally, I was drawn to this one again. I have everything prior, and I'm really excited to give this rule set a go, as well as the brand new scenarios that come inside of that Tome book. Very excited for that. Let me know in the comments down below. Potentially this could land on the channel as a playthrough in the future. If there's enough interest around it, let me know in the comments whether you'd be interested in seeing this game in action, and it could be something we could put into the list to do in the future. Now, if you're not a patron of my Patreon for the Rolling Solo community, I highly recommend you check it out. There might be something there of interest to you, and I do appreciate any and all support of the channel going into 2022 and beyond. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, keep on rolling solo.